What's up everyone? Welcome back to a brand new video. It seemed you guys really liked the last part, which is great because that means we can finally continue this series. Even though it hasn't really been a long while since the last part. If you haven't seen it already, basically it's right in the title. Roshi ends up finding Kakarot, and he ends up being the one to raise him, which does end up changing a lot, and there's a reason I'm calling him Kakarot because he never gets his name Goku and never hits his head. Or at least, he never accepts the name Goku. Which should show you a lot about his character just right there. But how will that affect things going forward, with him being a normal Saiyan and all? We'll be seeing all that and more in this part. For this video, let's set a like goal of 4,000 likes. If we hit that, I'll continue with another part to the series. Anyways, let's pick it from here. Following the last part, everyone's met Kame now. He seals Kid Piccolo away, introducing himself. And Kakarot decides he actually wants to train with him. Roshi says this might be a good next step for him. And Kame can see that this kid really needs it. Kakarot has some things that he needs to address first. Not only does he need to get stronger, but Kame could probably help reform him even more. Of course, he's learning a lot from Roshi right now. And his personality has changed a lot. He's not just a normal bloodthirsty Saiyan. He's very different, and he's been raised very well. But Kame could help him even more. Not just physically, but mentally. His mindset could change too, thanks to Kame. But first, he needs to make sure Kakarot is worthy. He's put through a series of tests, and Kakarot, of course, passes. This is, of course, done with some help from Korin. It takes some time, but it shows that Kakarot is definitely dedicated. So his training with Kame begins. One huge difference here is that Kakarot is going to keep his tail. Of course, Kame would probably want to try and remove it, but unlike Goku, this is different. Kakarot actually knows more about his Grade 8 form. Of course, he can't control it too well, but he knows to avoid it at all costs, and he actually decides that at some point in the future, he wants to actually train with it and get control over it. Plus, he has that wrathful form. Of course, he has no name for it, but he knows that when he gets really angry, something changes within him. So maybe he doesn't even need that Grade 8 form. Of course, he could still access this form without his tail, but he doesn't know that and he doesn't want to take that risk. And also, his tail is an extra limb to fight with. As a martial artist, that's actually very helpful. He's able to work on it so the tail isn't a weak point, and instead he's going to use it to his advantage. Eventually we get to the 23rd World Tournament. Kakarot's really grown up as of now. And there's a few big differences here. For one, there's no Piccolo, obviously. So the final fight's probably going to be between him and Tenshinhan, although it's going to be obvious who the winner is. Also, he actually knows who Chi-Chi is here, remembering her face because she does train with Roshi occasionally. And another big difference, Kakarot actually knows what marriage is. I mean, he is raised by Roshi. And for better or for worse, that means he's going to know a lot more about girls. Although he's not a creep like Roshi, so that's good at least. And he really has changed a lot since he got here. He's accomplished a lot in his childhood, becoming a lot more human-like. But he's still a cold, calculated, battle-smart Saiyan that can become vengeful pretty easily. Of course, he's worked over most of his issues, and he is a good guy by now. The fact that he's prone to rage is still a downside though, and it might hinder him in the future. Roshi and Kame could tell at the very least, he's grown a lot. And with him now being an adult and having so much experience under his belt, he only has even more room to grow going forward. So these issues could definitely be addressed, and they already have to some extent. As for his main rival, of course Krillin does end up still being his best friend, but Tenshinhan is his main rival here, which is great because he doesn't have to worry about him like Piccolo. Ten is still very powerful and has completely reformed by now. Of course, Kakarot is still stronger, but Ten is very strong in his own right, and he uses Kakarot's strength for his own motivation. Their personalities blend very well with each other, and the two work off each other to grow stronger and stronger, both physically and mentally. Ten even eventually ends up training with Kame too, trying to get the same strength as Kakarot, because Kakarot does need to take some time off. He does marry Chi-Chi, and eventually a kid is born. So there's something important I do want to address here, and that is the kid's name. Obviously this is Gohan, but there's a few differences here. For one, he's not going to be as good-natured as normal, since he's born to a Saiyan that isn't like Goku. Although he still is tamer because he is a hybrid, he's part human. But his name, it might not be Gohan here. What would his name be though? Honestly, I would like to change his name, but I know people would get easily confused and they'd probably forget why I changed his name, so I'm just going to keep it Gohan for the sake of simplicity. Not to mention, Kakarot still does know Grandpa Gohan, even though it's not his grandpa, so it's not completely outlandish for him to be named Gohan, but just know that I'm doing it for the sake of simplicity. Because what are the other alternatives? Chi-Chi naming him Einstein? Ox King naming him Ox in the Box? No, I'm not doing that. I guess I could go with a Saiyan name for him, and a pretty fitting name would be Turles because, you know, Goku, Saiyan name. It would fit pretty well. I also did actually consider giving him the name Goku since Kakarot's not accepting of it himself, but that would probably just make things even more confusing. So just to avoid any confusion, this will be Gohan. But it's important to note that I know it doesn't really make as much sense as it should. Like I said, I prefer going with a Saiyan name like Turles, but I don't want to confuse people, and also something like Kakarot Jr. wouldn't really work too well in my opinion. Not to mention there is that one scene in the anime where Gohan's actually the one to choose his name, so hey, I guess it kind of works. Anyways, we enter a brief time skip of a few years. It's weird for Kakarot to actually raise a kid because this is the first time ever getting any experience with it. And Saiyans normally aren't going to be home that much anyways, but for him, he's an Earthling now. Well, honorary Earthling, I guess. And family life is softening him up even more. Although this doesn't mean he completely abandons his training. No, he's still training a lot. Actually, probably more than Goku would have normally. And even Chi-Chi gets involved. Like I mentioned before, Chi-Chi has been training with Roshi before, even sparring with Kakarot from time to time. She would definitely have a lot more of a fighting spirit, especially because of her husband. He has a different nature here, so he'd probably affect her nature as well. Which also means she wouldn't be as opposed to Gohan training. Obviously, he still is a bit too young, but at some point, his Saiyan nature would kick in and he would want to train regardless. He's going to be a lot less passive than normal, and this will definitely affect things a lot going forward. Keep all of this in mind because it's very important. This entire family has a completely different dynamic, at least when it comes to fighting. Another major change occurs when Raditz arrives on Earth. His arrival goes pretty normal. He gets here and he starts looking around for Kakarot, and there's no Piccolo, so he goes right to Kakarot. He has the strongest power after all. And Kakarot actually remembers his brother. Once he sees Raditz, all the memories come back. Of course, he didn't really know Raditz too well. I mean, he was in an incubation chamber most of the time, but he does remember his name, and he has some brief visions of him. He's just very surprised to see his brother. He didn't know if he was actually still alive or not, and after all this time, he finally shows up here. What's been going on? Well, Raditz tells him bluntly, he wants Kakarot to join him. Join him for what? Join the rest of the Saiyans, at least the few that remain. There's him, Vegeta, and Nappa. Well, Kakarot still doesn't know much about what happened with Planet Vegeta. He can assume what happened, but he wants to know more, so Raditz tells him everything. And although it is appealing to try and join the Saiyans, he still considers the fact that he likes Earth better, and as far as he knows, the Saiyans are still very different from him. He's conflicted. He wants to stay on Earth and tells Raditz all about it, and how it's changed him. Raditz is disappointed, seeing that his brother has grown soft, but Kakarot tells him more about Earth. He's grown strong here. They're probably around the same strength too. Raditz doesn't care though. He threatens his brother. If he doesn't kill 100 people by tomorrow, he's gonna come back and kill everyone here on Earth, including his weakling brother. After hearing about Frieza, he tells Raditz he would like to help them. There's not just the prospect of a great fight against Frieza, but there's also the fact that Frieza might eventually target Earth someday. So this would help everyone. He doesn't need to kill people here to prove his worth. Raditz should trust his brother regardless. He can see how strong he is. And he's willing to help them, but Raditz doesn't trust Kakarot. He's too good-natured. He's become too soft. And he repeats what he said. Kill 100 Earthlings by tomorrow, or he'll do it himself. Raditz flies off, but then his scouter begins beeping. He turns around. Kakarot's power is increasing. He's getting enraged, but he's learned to control it thanks to Kame and all his training in the meantime. Beforehand, Raditz noted that his power was around 900. Not close to Raditz, but still way stronger than where Goku was originally. But now it's increasing a lot, and something else has changed about Kakarot. His hair's spiked up, his eyes are yellow. His power's gone up tenfold, it's over 9,000 now. Before Raditz even knows what's happening, he's attacked by Kakarot. And with a few simple attacks, Kakarot easily wins against him, and Raditz sees that his brother isn't as weak as he thought. They could definitely use this power. The fact that Kakarot attacked him without fear shows that he's actually not as soft as he thought. He doesn't like the fact that he's assimilated with these Earthlings, but Raditz says they can maybe work something out. He calms down Kakarot. As everyone else watches on confused, Roshi especially. He hopes that Kakarot makes the right choice, but knowing his student and his adopted son, he knows that he definitely will. He could have immediately resorted to violence against Raditz, but he didn't, and he completely controlled his anger until he actually needed it. That definitely shows his growth. The old Kakarot would have attacked Raditz without a second thought, without being as pragmatic as he is here. The two work out an agreement. Raditz apologizes, saying that he was lying about the Earthlings thing, but he actually wasn't. He just wants to make sure he's on Kakarot's good side. Kakarot's still very suspicious of his brother, but he thinks this will be fine. He tells everyone he's gonna head out into space to hear about this Frieza guy, and meet these other Saiyans too. But first he's gonna need a separate spaceship. I mean, he can't fit in Raditz's space pod. Oh yeah, Raditz didn't really think this out too well. Well, they could have sent an extra one here, but Kakarot has a better idea. He gets some help from Bulma, as well as Dr. Brief, who builds a spaceship. And also, Raditz noted something pretty interesting. The gravity here on Earth is way less than that of Planet Vegeta, and that might have contributed to the fact that Kakarot is weaker in its base form. So Kakarot asks Bulma and Dr. Brief if they can do anything, and they actually can, creating a gravity room which is even inside that spaceship. Raditz eventually heads off, and a few days later, the spaceship is complete and Kakarot goes off into space. But not alone though. Ten and Krillin are worried, and they go along with him to make sure everything's okay. Raditz gave them a meetup location, as the ship goes towards an uninhabited planet. When they get there, a few days have passed and they made use of that time by training. The gravity training has actually really helped. And they see 3 other space pods there. One of them is Raditz, and the other 2 are the other Saiyans, Vegeta and Nappa. They're all a bit concerned. Why are they meeting on a planet like this? It's kinda sketchy. But Vegeta tells them they need to stay off the radar from Frieza. He could probably find them anywhere, so this is the best option. Although Vegeta is a bit disappointed. Kakarot does seem kind of weak. Of course, he did get stronger in his base form from gravity training, but in his base, he seems even weaker than Nappa, only about 4,000. Which definitely isn't bad, but he expected more, especially since Raditz brought him here. And those two Earthlings seem pretty weak too, but everyone's suppressing their power right now. The two Earthlings power up, going to about 3,500 each, and as for Kakarot, he powers up, only showing off a fraction of his power, and he still surpasses 10,000, even going beyond that. The gravity training was really effective. They only had about a week or two to do this. But those few days of gravity training made a huge difference, especially for the Earthlings too, who were normally weak before. But Raditz tells them this isn't the extent of Kakarot's power. He saw it on Earth. When Kakarot is angered, he can make more use of his power. His power shot up tenfold last time he saw, almost as if he turned into a great ape, but without actually turning into one. Interesting, summoning the power of a great ape while retaining their humanoid form. They could definitely utilize this well. So Kakarot asked them, what's the plan to defeat Frieza? Well, Vegeta says they need to grow stronger first. He also heard rumors of some wish orbs. If he gets them, he can get immortality. He doesn't know where they are, but they're most likely on Namek. Kakarot knows that he's talking about the Dragon Balls, and he doesn't tell them that there's some on Earth. They don't trust Vegeta yet. Not even Raditz is trusted either. And Kakarot's just confused and a bit annoyed. So their plan is to get something that might not exist and get stronger before they fight Frieza, so why did they call him here right now? They can't even fight him yet? Vegeta tells Kakarot he doesn't know who he's dealing with. Frieza is incredibly strong, but yeah, why do they call him now though? If they still need to train, he could just go back to Earth, but Vegeta says that's not going to happen. He needs to stay here, train with them and show him this form. But Kakarot says that's stupid. He could just do this back on Earth. He'd rather train there and meet up with him eventually. They wasted so much of his time by making him come here, and they don't even have a plan. He thought they were immediately going to go fight Frieza. He, Tenshinhan, and Krillin go back in their ship. Vegeta gets mad, telling them to stay here or he'll force them to stay here. This only annoys Kakarot even more. Well, they ask for it. He powers up, going into his wrathful form. Nappa has a scouter on, and he sees Kakarot's power shoot up. It surpasses Vegeta, then it surpasses the 100,000 mark, even going past the 200,000 mark. What the hell? And Kakarot tells him the longer he uses this, the stronger he grows. Although, he doesn't like using it for long because he tends to lose control. He's still working on that, but he still would like to make this quick. He stretches out a hand, launching a simple blast of compressed air. This blast alone is so powerful that it knocks the three Saiyans back, injuring them too, keeping them away from the spaceship. Kakarot tells them to work on their strength, and next time, don't waste his time and call him here when they actually have a good plan, and when they're actually ready to fight Frieza. He's gonna return to Earth and keep training. The Saiyans weakly get up, and they watch as Kakarot's spaceship leaves. Krillin and Ten are wondering what to do next. That was a weird encounter, and they are pretty annoyed that the Saiyans wasted their time, but hey, at least they got info and they got some good training on the way by using the gravity chamber. But Kakarot is still concerned about Frieza. From what they were saying, Frieza might be a lot stronger than him, even in his wrathful form. He needs to train even more, especially with the people on Earth. And he does have an idea. On Earth, they're still going to train by using the gravity room. And they can recruit some more of their friends, specifically people like Chi-Chi, Yamcha, and Chaozu. It's also worth noting Yamcha isn't as involved with the group due to the events in the last part, but he still is a strong fighter that they do know of, although a lot less motivated than normal, which already says a lot. And he says it might sound crazy, but Gohan might actually be able to fight here. Those guys mentioned something about some sort of Super Saiyan, and with Gohan being a hybrid, they said that he has greater potential than a normal Saiyan. He doesn't know what a Super Saiyan is. It honestly just sounds like BS to him. But if that's actually true about hybrid Saiyans, Gohan has way more potential than they thought. He and Chi-Chi have noticed that Gohan is prone to moments of rage, where he gets a huge amount of power just like Kakarot does when he gets enraged. So they definitely need to hone that going forward. As soon as they get back to Earth, they tell everyone what's happening. They begin training because they fear that Frieza might eventually show up here. If not, the Saiyans showing up again even stronger than before, after finally seeing Kakarot's power. And also, he goes to Roshi with something important in mind. He wants Roshi to train Gohan, at least start training him. Gohan is definitely motivated here, and he is pretty young, but he's at an age where he could finally start training. Roshi's training worked very well for Kakarot, so it should work for Gohan too. He'd love to train Gohan. I mean, he is kind of his adoptive grandson after all. Unless you want to consider Kakarot that. Great-grandson? Whatever, doesn't make a difference. Gohan is family to him in his eyes. Kakarot's gonna train with Chi-Chi, Tenshinhan, and Krillin, while Roshi is gonna whip Gohan into shape, showing him the basics of martial arts, helping him become stronger, and most importantly, tapping into that rage and controlling it. Maybe even Kame could help here too. Unsure of when or if the Saiyans are ever going to show up again, or maybe even Frieza, the group begins their training. Meanwhile, out in space, the Saiyans begin their training too. They need to surpass Kakarot. That strength that he had is insane, and if they can unlock that, maybe they can defeat Frieza themselves, even without Kakarot. Well, maybe that's not a great idea. Strength in numbers is important, but still, first they need to defeat Kakarot, prove that they have a plan and they have the power to defeat Frieza. Everyone's training begins, and this is where we'll leave off for now. So, what did you guys think about this part? What do you think's gonna happen with Gohan and his training with Roshi? How strong will everyone else get? Leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. I'll be sure to check them out to see what you guys think. As always, if you liked the video, be sure to drop a like. And let's try to hit that like goal from the beginning of the video so we can get another part of this series. If you haven't already, why not subscribe? As well as hitting the bell icon so you're notified about any future uploads on my channel, including more parts of the series. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.